Okay, thank you, Job. So yeah, so it's a great honor to be there presenting my work at the QSORT seminar. And today I would like to speak of a topic which is at the intersection of two domains. So one is about quantum algorithm design, and the other is about statistics. So I'm going to use tools from those two domains. And the problem I will be considering is a very basic problem that you all know about. It's the mean estimation problem. So estimating the mean of a distribution. So this problem has a lot of application in many different areas. I'm not going to talk a lot about application, but I mean, just to give you an example, it's an important subroutine in the Monte Carlo method, in mathematical finance, in statistical physics, in statistics. So it's really, I think, a quite interesting question to understand what kind of advantage we could have in addressing this problem if we had a quantum computer. And maybe you all know about this quite old quantum algorithm, which is quantum counting. And I mean, quantum counting is one of the very primitive form of mean estimation in the quantum setting. So the goal here would be to consider like a more general setup, like to consider more general distribution than like a uniform distribution, and to try to see what we can do. Okay, so let me start by defining a bit more precisely what is the problem. It's just maybe a reminder. So I will be considering the problem of estimating the mean of a distribution which is over the real numbers. So it's a one-dimensional distribution. At the end of the talk, I will briefly mention the case of the multivariate setting. So we have some unknown distribution, which I will denote by D. It's specified by some probability vector. So P of X is the probability of observing the outcome X. And the way you can access to this distribution is by means of an experiment. So classically, an experiment is just a way of obtaining a classical sample distributed according to D. Okay, I will explain later on what is a quantum experiment and how we can access the distribution quantumly. But I mean, for now, just think of it as like how you access the distribution. Okay, so a distribution has some parameter of interest. So the one that we will be the most interested in is the mean or the expectation over the distribution. And another important parameter that I will assume exists is the variance of the distribution, denoted by sigma squared. So this parameter is important because it characterizes how spread out is the distribution. And if sigma is small, you expect the mean estimation problem to be easier to address. And the way we will measure the complexity of addressing the problem, I mean, the complexity parameter denoted by n, is going to be the number of times you can run the experiment that gives you information about the distribution D. Okay, so it's a fixed integer. And your goal is to collect those n pieces of information. You want to process them. And at the end, you want to output what is called a mean estimate, denoted by mu tilde. And the goal is that the error, which is just the distance between mu and mu tilde, is as small as possible. And the criterion that you want to satisfy is shown in red. Basically, with probability at least 1 minus delta, you want to be at distance at most epsilon n from the mean. Okay, and delta is some fixed failure probability. So this kind of statement is quite standard. I mean, when you want to like satisfy some error bound, I mean, it's kind of similar to the path learning setting, for instance. And the goal is really to understand how small this error term epsilon n can be. Okay, what is the best error you can achieve? Okay, so this is how the talk is going to be organized. So first, I will just, as a reminder, gives you what is possible to be done for this problem in the classical setting, where we obtain just classical sample. I mean, the answer is pretty well known. And then I will define more precisely what is the quantum input model. How do we access the distribution in the quantum setting? And then I will show you a series of 3 quantum mean estimators by order of efficiency in some sense. So the first one is going to be like the easiest one and the oldest one, which has been like obtained more than 20 years ago. And the last one, which I will present at the end, is going to be the optimal possible estimator for solving this problem, and it has just been obtained this year. And I will finish with some possible open question and future work. Okay, so let me start with the classical setting. So again, I mean, classically, you are just receiving classical sample, I mean, independent and identically distributed sample. So let's imagine those are the sample we received. And here the complexity parameter is equal to 12 because there are 12 samples. And I think the easiest estimator to process those samples is just to average their values. So it's called the sample mean estimator. And in that case, it would give us this estimate of the mean. So question is, how good is this estimator? So let's start with a quite important case, which is assume the distribution is not arbitrary, but it must be a Gaussian distribution. Okay, assume that. And in this case, it has been known for quite some time that the sample mean estimator is actually optimal. So you cannot do better than that if the distribution is Gaussian. And the error bound that you will achieve is this quantity, which is very important for the rest of the talk. And so this is like the square root of the variance. So the smallest the variance, the smallest the error is going to be, as expected. Then log 1 over delta. Delta, again, is the failure probability, which is between 0 and 1, and divided by the number of samples you are receiving as input. So now we would like to move to the general case where the distribution is not necessarily Gaussian, but can be arbitrary, with, like, let's say, a finite variance. And at first sight, we could think that it's going to be like the same error rate, because just according to the central limit theorem, when n goes to infinity, I mean, you expect to achieve the same kind of deviation bound. However, it doesn't exactly answer our problem, because this is an asymptotic result and it doesn't say anything for a fixed value of n. And actually, it turned out that it's not going to give you this error bound. I mean, the best you will obtain for an arbitrary distribution is actually captured by the Chebyshev inequality. And this is the error bound that you will obtain for in the general case. Okay, so the scaling in the variance and n is good, but you have like an exponentially worse dependence on delta. So of course, there is a natural question, which is there a better estimator than the very simple sample mean estimator? So I think you all know the answers. I mean, the answer is yes, there is a better estimator. I mean, simple modification of the previous one. It's sometimes called the median of means estimator. It's a two-step estimator. So first, you are going to partition your input sample in about log 1 over delta blocks. You will compute the mean over each of those blocks, and then you will compute the median of all the results. By standard concentration inequality, you can show that with this new approach, you will achieve the same error bound as in the Gaussian case, even if the distribution is not Gaussian. Okay, so it's a very nice result, because it means you don't have to assume the distribution to be Gaussian to achieve this optimal error bound. Okay, so I mean, this result motivates the following definition, which is that a mean estimator is going to be called sub-Gaussian if it can achieve the same error bound as in the Gaussian case, so the term in red, but for any distribution with finite variance. Okay, so I just gave you an example of such an estimator, the median of means, but there are many other possible choices, which are a bit more complicated to describe. And it's actually still an active topic of research. So there is a paper this year at Fox by Lee and Valiant, where they obtained a new sub-Gaussian estimator in which they were able to achieve the optimal hidden constant in the big O notation. Okay, so there is a really nice theory around those sub-Gaussian estimators. So let me make just two observations about those estimators. So the first is, maybe you noticed that for the median of means, we needed to know delta in advance because we were like processing the data in a way that depending on delta. And it turns out that in general, if you want to achieve this bound, you must know what is the failure probability that you want to achieve. It has to be part of the input. If it's not part of the input, you cannot obtain an optimal sub-Gaussian estimator. So we can assume without loss of generality that it is indeed part of the input if we want to have something optimal. A second observation is in practice, when people use a mean estimator, it's quite often the case that what you want is to achieve a fixed approximation guarantee. So for instance, you have some error epsilon in mind, some real parameter between 0 and 1, and you want to find mu, which is epsilon close in relative distance to mu. Okay, and you really want to stop the estimator when you are sure that you will achieve this guarantee. So if you look at this bound, how large n must be if you want to achieve such an error? Well, it's quite simple to see that you will have to take n to be at least sigma over epsilon mu squared times log 1 over delta. Okay, just if I replace the parameter by the correct values. However, there is a problem with this choice, which is we are not supposed to know what is mu and what is sigma at the beginning of the computation. I mean, those are unknown. So we don't really know how many samples we should receive as input before we are able to output some fixed guarantee. So there are basically, I mean, there are at least two ways to answer this problem. The most common one maybe is to, in practice, design the distribution in a way that you can have some information about those kind of quantity. Okay, so just to give you an example, for instance, there is this very important algorithm in the data streaming community, this algorithm by Alon, Matthias, and Zegedi, which is like one of the very first streaming algorithm. And if you look at this algorithm, what they really do is they designed an experiment for which the mean is encoding the quantities that they want to estimate. And this distribution, even if it's not completely known how the samples are going to be distributed, they can still have a good upper bound on the ratio between sigma and mu. So you can parameterize the estimator with this upper bound, and then you can achieve those fixed guarantees. The other possible choice is there are different kinds of estimators that I'm not going to present here, but there are estimators that can achieve those kind of fixed guarantee by using more samples than what would be needed with a sub-Gaussian estimator. But those more advanced estimators are using sub-Gaussian estimator as a subroutine. Okay, I mean, it just means that in the general case, if you want to achieve those guarantees, you really need to begin with a sub-Gaussian estimator. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say for the classical setting. So before I move on to the quantum one, is there any question about the classical setting?
This prefactor you mentioned, that's what you mean in the big omega?
Yeah, so it's going to be square root of 2 times sigma square log 1 over delta over n. Yeah. And what's really nice about this prefactor, it's exactly the prefactor that is predicted by the central limit theorem or the quotient case. I mean, it's really like as if the distribution was Gaussian.
And what's the prefactor for the median of means estimator?
Okay, I don't know. It's a larger constant than square root 2, but I don't know what it is exactly.
But it's not like a million, it's like 10 or something.
No, I don't think it's million, but it's maybe 100 or something.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Oh, it's not that bad, yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's what for classical setting. So let me move to the quantum setting. So the first thing which is important to notice about the quantum setting is we must modify the input model, because if the input was classical and if you would like to just apply a quantum computation on it, you won't be able to obtain a better error rate, because I mean the lower bound are information theoretic. It's nothing about time complexity, it's just about, like, if you have n classical samples, I mean, you can take as much time as you want to process them, you won't be able to obtain a better error rate than what I showed before. So if you want a quantum advantage, you really need to modify the input model. You need a stronger access to the input. And a second motivation to consider, I mean, quantum input is if we have like quantum, I mean, computers, quantum phenomenon, we should have like some quantum representation of a distribution, I mean, some coherent access to the distribution. So it's natural to say that what can be done with this potentially more powerful access model. So, okay, so this is a first possible choice to define a quantum input model for addressing the mean estimation problem. And here it's a model which has been considered by some authors in other areas of quantum computing. For instance, in quantum park learning, or this algorithm for learning DNF. And the way the input is defined is as follows. So here, an experiment is going to be defined as receiving one copy of a quantum state called a Q sample, which is just a coherent encoding of a classical sample. Okay, so it's a superposition over the element of the sample space with the amplitude encoding the probability vector. So of course, it's at least as powerful as the previous model, because what you can do is just measure this Q sample in the standard basis, and it will convert this Q sample into a classical sample. So you can at least run a classical estimator on this input. It turns out that this model will not give you any advantage over the classical setting for solving the mean estimation problem. Okay, what I mean by that is there is a lower bound saying that the best you can do is actually to measure those Q samples, to convert them into classical sample, and then run a classical sub-Gaussian estimator on them. That's the optimal strategy you can achieve. And I mean, this kind of limitation is sometimes called the standard quantum limit in quantum metrology. And it really states that having those kind of non-adaptive access to the input is not going to give you enough power to achieve any quantum speedup. So we'll need to consider a more powerful model, which is a kind of an oracle model. So this is what I'm going to talk about now. And the way this model is defined is as follows. So instead of just receiving the Q sample, we assume that you can, in fact, access the process that generated this Q sample. Okay, you have a black box access to it. So more formally, what I mean by that is there is some fixed unitary UD, which will depend on the unknown distribution. And the promise is, if you apply this unitary on the all zero state, if you take as input the all zero state, it's going to give you as output a Q sample. Okay, but what you can do is you don't really have to apply it on the all zero state. If you want, you can apply it on any state of your choice. Okay, and whenever you do that, it will cost you one experiment. And we also assume that you can apply the inverse of that unitary. I mean, in practice, those kind of assumptions, I mean, if this unitary was obtained by some quantum circuit, you could just reverse the circuit to obtain the implementation of the inverse. So, okay, and in fact, we can even have a slightly weaker assumption, which is we don't really need to prepare exactly a Q sample. We can also have some garbage left. It's not going to impact the quality of the algorithm I will talk about later on. So this input model is a quite standard one in the quantum literature. So it's basically the model which is behind the Grover algorithm, the Grover search algorithm. I mean, the quantum minimum finding algorithm and a lot of different algorithms in quantum computing are basically relying on those kind of access model. And in this model, again, if you go to quantum metrology, this time there is something called the Heisenberg limit, which predicts that with such a stronger access to the input, you should be able to achieve an error rate, your mean estimation, which should scale as 1/n instead of 1/√n. So you should be able to obtain at least some advantage for the dependence on n. So our goal here will be to understand in a more precise way what are the dependencies on the other parameters, such as the variance, delta, etc. I mean, the goal is really to have a quantum counterpart of the classical sub-Gaussian result. So by that, I mean that we would like to have an optimal quantum estimator, which is going to perform as good in the Gaussian case as in the general case. And this is a result that I will try to present you. So on the left is the classical best possible complexity. And on the right, this is a result which we are going to obtain. So this is the best possible error rate that you can achieve in the quantum setting with the previous input model. So as you can see, as predicted by the Heisenberg limit, we have this 1/n scaling. And we have this linear dependence on the standard deviation and log 1/delta. Okay, so just to plug some parameter, imagine you want to achieve a constant error, so big O of 1. Classically, you would need on the order of sigma squared times log 1/delta classical samples. And quantumly, you would need sigma times log 1/delta. So you would have a quadratic speedup for the dependence on the variance. So for most of this talk, I will focus on a slightly weaker result, which is a bit easier to describe. So first, I will fix delta to be some constant, let's say 1/3. So I will forget about the log 1/delta term. And I will replace the variance with the second moment of the distribution. Okay, there is not a big difference because in practice, you can go from this result to this one just by like centering the distribution. So it's not very complicated once you know how to do that to obtain this result. And a last assumption, which is also going to simplify the presentation, is I will assume that the distribution is supported over non-negative real numbers. Okay, again, this can be removed in an easy way, this assumption.
May I ask a question, Yassine?
Yes.
So this centering requires that you subtract the very thing that you're trying to estimate, right?
Yeah, okay, so basically the way the centering is done is you are going to collect very few classical samples, basically log 1/delta classical sample. And you will compute the average of those samples, and you will center according to this average.
Okay, that's not, okay.
So you will invest a bit of your budget on classical sample, but I mean, you don't have a lot of them to find how to center it. You are not centering by mu, which would be too expensive indeed. I mean, and you don't know.
Exactly. That's, if you could, then you're done.
Yeah, you are done. So you don't have to do that.
Okay, so you're centering by a crude approximation of.
Yeah, I mean, just because actually, when you take just one classical sample, it's going to be sigma at distance sigma from the mean with high probability. and it's sufficient to center by something which is at distance sigma to the mean. So it's not a big deal. Yeah. And I mean, same thing for non-negative value, we just split the distribution in like positive and negative part and estimate the mean of each part separately. Okay, so let me start with the first possible quantum mean estimator that we will consider in this input model. So I'll call it the Bernoulli estimator. It's maybe not a very standard term, but I think there is a good reason for calling it Bernoulli because it's really going to be a reduction to the case of a Bernoulli distribution. So we'll have an algorithm for solving the case where the distribution is Bernoulli, and having this algorithm we will easily solve the case of any distribution in a not optimal way. Okay, so Bernoulli distribution, we have just two possible outcomes, 0 and 1. With probability p, we obtain the value 1. And the mean in this case is just p. So we want to estimate the value of p. So there is a very simple fact about Bernoulli distribution, which is that if you consider an arbitrary distribution D supported over some range of values between 0 and b is some fixed parameter that you know in advance, and this distribution has some unknown mean mu, then by using some rejection sampling techniques, you can basically simulate the Bernoulli distribution of parameter mu over b as follows. So if you want to get one sample from this Bernoulli distribution, what you do is you obtain one sample from D, one classical sample. I'm just talking about the classical setting for now. So you get a classical sample, then you sample a uniformly at random, you sample a uniform value y between 0 and b. And if y is smaller than x, you return y, and otherwise you return 0. Okay, so this defines a Bernoulli distribution. And if you compute the parameter of this Bernoulli, I mean, it's a very simple computation. You just have to sum over all the possible outcomes. Each of them is obtained probability p of x. And then probability of obtaining 1, meaning y being smaller than x, is exactly x over b. Okay, so the mean of, the parameter of this Bernoulli distribution is exactly mu over b. Okay, so really like, it means that if you can estimate p with an error on the order of some quantity epsilon and p, then by this very simple reduction, it means that you can also estimate the mean of any distribution bounding between 0 and b with this error term. Okay, so you have to multiply by b because you are just rescaling everything by a factor b. So you have to rescale by b and you plug the parameter of the simulation. So the second important observation is this reduction actually can also be done in the quantum setting, meaning that if you have a quantum oracle to the distribution D, then you can construct a quantum oracle to the Bernoulli of parameter mu over b. So it's a very well-known result. I mean, it's a very standard result in quantum computing. So just to remind you how it's done, you start as in the classical setting, you like run one quantum experiment, obtaining one Q sample. And then you are going to do something similar to sampling this value y, but here we are going to do it in kind of superposition. So you will use an extra register, which is initially the zero state. So it's a 1 qubit register. And in this register, you will perform a controlled rotation according to the value contained in the sample register. Okay, and we'll assume you can do that with perfect accuracy. Okay, so it just requires one quantum experiment, used here. But what you obtain, if you just rewrite it in a different way, you can see that you are really obtaining an access to a Bernoulli distribution of the correct parameter. Okay, just because the amplitude in front of the one state up to some garbage state is really going to be the square root of mu over b. Okay, so we just did the same thing as in the classical setting, meaning that if there is a way to estimate the parameter of a Bernoulli distribution in the quantum setting, then by using this reduction, we'll also be able to estimate the mean of an arbitrary distribution. Okay, so let's try to focus on the Bernoulli case to see what we can do. So again, this is the setup. We have a unitary U which prepares a superposition with basically the amplitude encoding the parameter of the Bernoulli. And the way this problem is addressed is by the well-known amplitude estimation algorithm, discovered by Brassard, Heuer, Tapp, and Moscon. And this algorithm, works as follows. You consider the Grover operator, which depends on the unitary U and its inverse. As you all know, it's a rotation. It has two eigenvalues, where the phase is encoding basically the amplitude. Because the sinus square of theta is equal to the parameter of the Bernoulli. So now what you would like to do is you would like to estimate theta. So you run phase estimation on the Grover operator. What you will obtain is a phase estimate, theta tilde. So there are two possible cases. Either theta tilde is an estimate of theta, or it can be an estimate of pi minus theta. Okay, so you don't know which one is going to be the case, but it's not a big deal because what you are going to do is to apply the sinus square function, which in both cases is going to give you the same result. And if you just apply some trigonometric identities, this is what you obtain at the end. Okay, so the result of the amplitude estimation algorithm is that you can estimate the parameter of a Bernoulli distribution with this error bound. So now let's go back to the case of the bounded distribution. Okay, bounded between 0 and b. So if we use the reduction I showed you 2 slides ago, and if we use the amplitude estimation algorithm, if we combine them together, this is what we are going to achieve. Okay, so it means we can estimate the mean of any distribution bounded between 0 and b with this error bound. So we would like to compare this quantity to the classical sub-Gaussian error rate. So maybe it's a bit easier to modify it a little bit. So let's assume the smallest non-zero value in the support of the distribution is A. And then if this is the case, then you can say that the mean mu is at most the second moment divided by n. Okay, so you can have this inequality. And now it's a bit simpler to compare it to the classical setting. So basically you have those two terms we were not present in the classical sub-Gaussian case, and they are not very good actually. So basically you have a dependence on the largest and the smallest value in the support of the distribution. Okay, and it's not going to depend directly on the variance, and the variance can be small, but still the parameter b can be very large, for instance. Okay, another way to say that is that this estimator is going to be extremely sensitive to outliers. Okay, so we have the correct scaling for the second moment, the square root of the second moment, but we would like to remove those two terms because, in some very bad cases, this estimator can be worse than a classical estimator. So for the rest of the talk, I will explain you how you can improve the Bernoulli estimator to get rid of those two quantities. I will start with the first term, the b over a, how to remove this b over a. Okay, so this is going to be the second result I will show you. This second estimator is going to be called a truncated estimator. So truncation is a very important idea in statistics. And it's also a very simple observation, which is if you have outliers in the distribution, well, the simplest thing you could do maybe is just to remove those outliers. Okay, meaning you will just ignore values which are much larger than some threshold parameter. So the way we will use truncation in our quantum estimators is as follows. Let's assume you have two fixed values, A and B, which are like fixed in advance. And what you want to do is you want to map the outcome outside the range AB to the zero value of the distribution. Okay, so if this is the initial distribution, you want to truncate it in the following way. Okay, so the probability between A and B are not changed, but the samples outside this range are mapped to the 0 value. So of course, the probability of observing 0 is going to be much higher. So when you do that, the distribution is supported over a smaller range of values, but of course the expectation is going to be modified. So what we will really use is the following simple observation about the truncation process, which is, imagine that instead of doing just one truncation, you do a sequence of truncation. So by that, I mean you choose a sequence of increasing values, and you will truncate the distribution into k+1 parts. Okay, so the first one is the distribution truncated between A0 and A1, and then you continue like that. And the very last part is going to be all values above AK, so the largest value you choose. And so by linearity of expectation, if you can estimate off those individual mean with a good error rate, you can just recombine them into an estimate of the global mean. So of course, it's not going to be that easy because you have to decide how you compute this sequence. You want K to be as small as possible because you want to be as efficient as possible. And so it's really not clear how you should perform this truncation process. Okay, so this is a choice I suggest for performing this truncation process. So it's going to be parameterized by some value t, some threshold value t. I will discuss later on how we choose t. But let's imagine for now that t is a fixed parameter. And we are going to choose this sequence of A0, A1, etc. value in the following way. So the first interval is going to be all values between 0 and t over n. And then t over n and 2t over n, and then we continue like that, each time multiplying the size by 2. And when we reach the threshold t, we are going to stop and we will not estimate the remaining part of the distribution. Okay, so the second question is, how do we estimate each individual mean? Well, this is how we will do it. We'll just apply the Bernoulli estimator, the estimator I showed you in the previous section. Okay, and we will run basically n steps of the Bernoulli estimator in each interval. Okay, so in total, we have about log n intervals. So if we spend n experiment on each interval, it means we will need n log n experiment in total. Okay, so there is some log factor, but it's not going to be very important. I mean, I don't care about log factor in here. Okay, so you run the Bernoulli estimator in the first interval, then in the second one, okay, and again, etc. And for the last part, you don't run it. You just say, okay, the last part is going to be estimated by the value 0. So now, how good is this estimator? Well, it's just a very simple computation. You just plug the error bound that I showed you in the previous section. And what is very important is if you remember this parameter b over a, like the larger over smaller value in the range of the distribution, now this parameter is going to be the value 2. Okay, just because if you take an interval and if you divide like the upper value by the lower one, you obtain 2. Okay, so you have to address the case of the first interval because you have the value 0, but it's not complicated to address in a separate manner. Okay.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
How do you choose the value of t?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. It's going to be the last part of the talk, actually. But yeah, it's a very important choice. Yeah, so let me make a comment about the value t. So, okay, first I would like to rewrite this expression just by applying some Cauchy-Schwarz. So that's what you obtain. As you can see, it's better than what we had before because the first term now is exactly what we wanted to achieve. So this square root of the second moment over n. But now we have two extra terms which we don't want. So one is this t over n squared, and the last one corresponds to the part that we are just omitting. And of course, you will have to choose t such that this quantity is as small as possible. I mean, the goal is to have a quantity here which is on the same order as the first quantity. So it's not even clear that it's possible to do that. And it's kind of, so if you want to minimize this term, you would like to take t as small as possible. But if you take t to be very small, then this part is going to be very large. Okay, so you have to balance the choice you made. Okay, so this is going to be the goal of the last part, how to remove those two terms. So I should say that this estimator has been considered in a series of 3 papers on quantum mean estimators, the first one by Heinrich in 2002, and it has been kind of generalized by Montanaro and myself and Magnez in the last years. Okay, so let me move to the very last part of the talk, which is about achieving the optimal possible error rate in the quantum case. So we'll start with the estimator I showed you in the previous section, and we'll focus on optimizing this quantity by choosing the right value of t. So let's try to look at the first possible choice, which is the following choice. So let's imagine you replace t by n times the square root of the second moment. Okay, this is actually the choice which was made in those papers. So the second term is going to be of the right order of magnitude. It will be square root second moment over n, so it's good. And the last term is also going to be small, because by a very simple inequality, you can show that it's indeed at most the second moment over t, so it's also going to be of the right order of magnitude. So, okay, so this choice is a good choice, actually. However, there is a problem with this choice, which is it depends on the second moment, and this quantity, you are not really supposed to know what it is at the beginning of the computation. So the way this was addressed in this previous work is by saying that by making some extra assumption about the distribution, such as let's assume we have an upper bound on the variance, or let's assume we have an upper bound on the ratio between the variance and the mean. And using those extra assumptions, they can obtain something close to this quantity, and then they can plug it inside this error bound. But it's not completely satisfying, because classically, if you look at median of means, for instance, you don't need any extra assumption as input. Okay, so this extra assumption seems not to be really necessary in the classical setting, so it shouldn't be the case in the quantum setting either. So this is the second choice which can improve the situation, and this was a choice which was made in a recent paper by myself this year. So the idea is to choose t in a different way, as follows. So you will define t to be an approximate value of the 1 over n squared quantile of the distribution. So by that I mean that the goal is to find t such that this equality is satisfied, and this equality says that the probability of observing a value which is larger than t must be on the order of 1 over n squared. It's really the definition of what is the quantile of the distribution. Okay, a different way of thinking about that is you want to solve this equation. Okay, the unknown is t, and you want to find an approximate solution of this equation. So again, there are two questions. The first one is it a good choice? And the second question is, can you compute it efficiently? So let's address the first question. So if you just apply Markov inequality, you can make the simple observation that this new definition is going to give you a value t which is smaller than the one made in the previous choice. Okay, t is going to be smaller than n times the second moment, so the second quantity in the error bound is going to be small enough. then another simple inequality, the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality, is going to tell you that the last term here is smaller than the square root of the second moment times the probability of being larger than t. But by definition of t, we know that this probability is on the order of 1 over n squared. So again, it's going to be small enough. Okay, so we have just proved that this choice is a correct choice. So now the last and most interesting part is how can we compute t? And especially, can we compute t without any prior knowledge about the distribution? Okay, so that's going to be the very last technical slide, and I will show you that indeed you can compute it, or you can at least estimate it by doing about n quantum experiments. So it takes some time, but it takes just the right amount of time, okay? Because you are allowed to perform n experiment, and in those amount of time, you can indeed find such a quantile value. Okay, so the goal of this very last technical slide is to explain how to estimate a quantile value in the quantum setting. So for those of you that know about the quantum minimum finding algorithm by Durand-Hoyer, is going to be very similar ideas. And actually, there is a quantile finding algorithm which was designed by Nayak and Wu for a particular case of uniform distribution. I mean, here we don't assume the distribution is uniform. The distribution can be arbitrary. Okay, so how do you compute the quantile of a distribution? So again, let's think about the classical setting where we obtain classical sample. And I think the easiest approach is the following one. So first, you will just sample one value from your distribution. Okay, so you take one classical sample, let's call it T1, and you know that with high probability, this value T1 is going to be close to the median of the distribution. Okay, you are going to obtain something in the middle of the distribution. Okay, another way to say that is, if you take one sample, you will obtain something which is close to the 1/2 quantile of the distribution. Okay, then the second step is you are going to sample from the marginal of the distribution. By that, I mean you want to sample from the distribution D, but condition on being larger than T1. Okay, so how do you do that? Classically, you just pick a sample. If it's larger than T1, then you are done. Otherwise, you restart. Okay, so it's a rejection sampling approach. So what you will obtain when you do that, when you do this conditional sampling, you will obtain a new sample T2. And again, it's going to be the median of the marginal, which is basically the 1/4 quantile of the distribution. Okay, so again, you are going just to repeat the thing again and again. You are going to sample from the marginal of T2, etc. And you will do that for about log n squared steps. And by the same reasoning as before, you expect this value to be close to the quantile of order 1/n squared, which is what you wanted to estimate. So on the positive side, this algorithm is going to converge pretty quickly. I mean, you need just about log n steps to reach the value you are interested in. On the negative side, what is complicated here is to sample from the marginal. Okay, the first sample is easy to obtain, but the larger is Ti, the harder it is going to be to sample from the marginal of the value larger than Ti. Okay, I mean, more precisely, if you just have classical sample, okay, so basically what is going to be the harder case, when you are close to the end, you are basically sampling condition on some event which has a probability 1/n squared to happen. Okay, the marginal, I mean, sampling from the marginal can be done with probability 1/n squared when you take a sample from distribution D. Okay, so if you have classical sample and if you want to sample condition on such an event, you will need n squared classical samples just to get one thing from the marginal. So classically, the conclusion is, if you want to estimate the quantile of order 1/n squared with this approach, you will need 1/n squared classical samples. And I mean, it's not surprising, it's actually the optimal complexity. So now we are in the quantum input model, so we can do things which are a bit more powerful. We don't really have to obtain classical sample. We have this quantum oracle access to the input. And it turned out that this quantum oracle access is just as powerful as we need to apply the well-known amplitude amplification algorithm. So this algorithm, which is just a generalization of Grover search, it tells you that when you have some events that succeed with probability, let's say 1/n squared, classically, you can boost the probability to constant by using just on the order of n steps of quantum computation. Okay, you have a quadratically more efficient probability boosting than in the classical setting. Okay, and so by using this amplitude amplification on top of this approach, you will be able to estimate a quantile of order 1/n squared in just n steps of computation. Okay, and really this concludes the presentation of the main estimators. So just to recap, the quantum sub-Gaussian estimator is an optimal estimator for estimating the mean in the quantum setting. And it has basically 3 steps. So the first step is to compute the quantile of order 1/n squared. The second step is to truncate the distribution according to the value of this quantile. And the last step is to apply the quantum Bernoulli estimator on each truncated distribution, and then to recombine the estimate into your final mean estimate. Okay, and this gives you something which is optimal. So I didn't talk about lower bound in this talk, but there is a matching lower bound, I mean, up to logarithmic factor. The lower bound is proved in the quantum query complexity setting by doing some reduction from the quantum search problem. Okay, so I would like just to conclude the talk with 2 open questions or 2 directions for future work. So a first possible interesting question is to look at application. As I said before, there are a lot of classical application to mean estimation. So it's also the case in the quantum setting. But here I would like to discuss about a bit more general open question. So the first one is about variance reduction. So it's a slightly more general question than estimating the mean. And the question is the following one. So assume you have some distribution D, again with min mu and variance sigma square. And if you apply the basic sample mean estimators, meaning you just take the average of n samples, then you know that what you obtain as output of this estimator is a new distribution D prime, which has 2 important properties. So the first one is an unbiased estimator of the mean, meaning it has the same mean as before. And the variance is decreased exactly by a factor of n. Okay, those are the 2 important properties of the sample mean estimator. Now, if you go to the quantum setting, again, you can run n quantum experiments. So the question is the following one. Is it possible to construct a quantum process that would proceed those n quantum experiments and that would construct a distribution D prime, D second, with min mu and with variance sigma square over n square? Okay, so what's important here is you want this distribution to have the same mean as the original one, and you want to reduce the variance quadratically faster than in the classical setting. And I think there are good reasons to expect that such a result is possible to achieve, because if you look at the quantum sub-Gaussian estimator that I presented you, it's basically answering the second part of this question. So it's basically giving you a new distribution with a mean which is close to this quantity. So it's indeed having a quadratic decrease in the variance. However, the quantum sub-Gaussian estimator is not unbiased. So here you don't have mu. the expectation of the output of the quantum mean estimator is not exactly new. So if we could make it unbiased, it would answer this question. And that would be interesting for at least two reasons. So the first reason is because it would give you an alternative way of constructing a sub-Gaussian estimator, because once you know how to do that, you can easily construct a quantum sub-Gaussian estimator. And the second and more interesting application is if you have such a result, you can directly apply it to a problem called the problem of estimating partition function in statistical physics, which is a quite important problem. And if you had such a result, you could obtain a very nice quantum speedup for solving this problem in the quantum setting. Okay. Okay, so now let me give you a second open problem, which is also related to the mean estimation problem. Actually, it's just the generalization to the multivariate setting. Okay, so far I just talked about the one-dimensional case, meaning the distribution is over the reals. But of course, there is an even more interesting case, which is what if the distribution is supported over some set of dimension d. So again, there is a very nice theory classically about what is the optimal possible error rate. There is a theory of multivariate sub-Gaussian estimator. And I mean, just for your knowledge, this is the optimal possible error rate in the classical setting. So now it depends on the covariance matrix of the distribution. If d is equal to 1, this is going to be just the variance over like log 1 over delta over n. So you are going to recover the one-dimensional case. And I should say that this classical theory is a very active topic. I mean, for instance, the first computationally efficient estimator achieving this bound was just discovered 3 years ago, actually. So again, you could ask the question now, if we have quantum access to the multivariate distribution, what is the best possible error rate? And the answer is potentially quite surprising to, I mean, at least to me, because there are at least 2 papers that consider this question. And the first paper was a paper by Heinrich, where he showed that when the number of Rakel query is less than the dimension, there are distributions for which you cannot obtain any quantum speedup at all. Okay, so it's very different from what we saw before. I mean, there are parameters for which, even if you have this stronger input model, you cannot do anything. Of course, if d is equal to 1, it's not giving you anything. I mean, when d is equal to 1, it's okay, you can still obtain the speedup as we did. The second observation, which has been made just like a few months ago by Cornelissen and Gerby, is when you are above the dimension, okay, when you can perform more query than the dimension, there do exist some distribution for which a quantum speedup is possible. Okay, so it seems that there is something happening when n becomes larger than the dimension. There are basically two regimes. And so if you look at those works, there is a natural conjecture that appears, which is the following one. Can you find a quantum estimator in the multivariate setting with the following complexity? So the minimum between the classical case, so this error bound, and this new quantity, which is a bit different from what we saw before because it has a dependence on the square root of the dimension. Okay, and because of this square root d term, when n is less than d, this term is going to be larger than the classical one, as we expect as it should be the case. So, okay, this is what could be the situation when you are below d, you are converging at a classical rate, even if you have quantum input access. But when you are above d, you can have a quantum speedup for the error rate. So I should say this is a question I have been investigating with Ariane and Sofiane, and we have some preliminary results for proving this conjecture, but okay, that's a different topic. Okay, now let me finish with a few references which can give you a bit more detail about this mean estimation problem. If you just want to know more about the classical setting, you can look at this very nice survey paper. And the other papers are about the quantum setting. And with that, I thank you for your attention.